Brahman is one of the most fundamental concepts in Hindu philosophy and is central to the teachings of Vedanta. At its core, Brahman is the ultimate reality, the all-pervading, eternal, and infinite consciousness that underlies all existence. In this video, we will explore the concept of Brahman in more detail, looking at its nature, its relationship to the individual self, and its role in spiritual practice. What is Brahman? Brahman is often described as the ultimate reality, the highest truth, and the source of all existence. It is the unchanging, eternal, and infinite consciousness that underlies all of creation. In Vedanta philosophy, Brahman is seen as the cause of the universe, the force that gives rise to all of creation, sustains it, and eventually absorbs it back into itself. Brahman is also described as being beyond all dualities and opposites, such as good and evil, pleasure and pain, and birth and death. It is the absolute, unchanging, and eternal reality that transcends all distinctions and categories. Relationship to the individual self in Vedanta philosophy. The individual self Atman is seen as being identical with Brahman. This means that the true nature of the individual self is the same as the ultimate reality of Brahman. However, due to the illusion of individuality and separation created by the mind, this identity is not immediately apparent. The Upanishads teach that the individual self is essentially a limited expression of the infinite consciousness of Brahman. It is like a wave in the ocean, separate in appearance but fundamentally one with the ocean. The individual self is seen as being bound to the cycle of birth and death, and its ultimate goal is to realize its identity with Brahman and achieve liberation from the cycle of samsara. Role in spiritual practice. The realization of the identity between the individual self and Brahman is the goal of spiritual practice in Vedanta philosophy. This realization is achieved through the process of self-inquiry and the cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Self-inquiry involves questioning the nature of the individual self and seeking to understand its true nature. The Upanishads teach that the individual self is not the body, mind, or senses, but rather the pure consciousness that underlies them. By realizing this truth through self-inquiry, one can overcome the illusion of individuality and realize the identity with Brahman. Spiritual knowledge. Jnana is also essential to the realization of Brahman. This knowledge is gained through the study of the scriptures, the guidance of a qualified teacher, and the practice of meditation. It involves understanding the nature of Brahman, the nature of the individual self, and the relationship between the two. Conclusion. In conclusion, Brahman is the ultimate reality in Vedanta philosophy, the all-pervading, eternal, and infinite consciousness that underlies all existence. It is beyond all dualities and categories, and is the source of all creation. The individual self is seen as being identical with Brahman, but this identity is not immediately apparent due to the illusion of individuality and separation. The goal of spiritual practice in Vedanta philosophy is to realize the identity between the individual self and Brahman, and to achieve liberation from the cycle of samsara. This realization is achieved through the process of self-inquiry and the cultivation of spiritual knowledge. By realizing the true nature of the self as Brahman, one can overcome the illusion of individuality and experience the ultimate reality directly.